Whoa, it is mock draft time. Whoa, it is mock draft. If you want to see a mock draft live, then I have good news for you tonight. 'Cause that's what this is. It's called a solo mock draft, and it is happening right now, you guys. Whoa, it is mock draft time. Whoa, it is mock draft. Let's make picks for every single team. It's a real mock draft, not just a dream. We're live on Twitch and later on podcast platforms. This is a first round solo mock draft. Whoa, it is mock draft time. Whoa, it is mock draft time.
Hi, everybody. That is correct. It is mock draft time, and I am Doug. And I'm here by myself. It is solo mock draft time, as the song implied. So, thank you for tuning in. This is after the Senior Bowl. There's still a lot more to do in the draft process. I'm sure a lot will change from now until the end of April when, I don't have any current plans to go to Detroit for that for obvious reasons. The fact that it's in Detroit, but I'll think about it anyway. I think the plan is tonight at least look at one scenario, which I think is worth exploring. This will be a no trades to start here. Very potentially, I'm going to do a trades version after the no trades. So if you're interested in that, do stick around. Kind of depend on how I'm feeling. I'm not going to go too deep into each individual player. This isn't exactly a like a team fit, uh, what the team needs are analysis type of a mock draft. This is coming from a college football fan and just the players that I really like and the value that I have on these guys. Of course, with a mock draft, you have to take into account team needs, those kinds of things. We are too far out to really understand that right now, right? So we still have a free agency to go through. We still have coaching staffs to be settled. There's a lot of things that need to be sorted out before we will have a really solidified understanding of the draft this year. But as of right now, we kind of know the value of a lot of these guys, and we kind of know what teams might be looking for. So these are still fun. I know it is a bit early. Um, hey, that's what mock drafts are for, just exploring some scenarios. So let's go ahead and jump into Pro Football Focus Mock Draft Simulator. It's the best one out there right now. That might change, but we're going to start this. No trades. Just get going here. And of course, that does mean we start with the Chicago Bears in a scenario where they do not trade out of number one overall. That would mean to me that they are trading Justin Fields at some point and will be taking a quarterback at number one overall, especially with the addition of Cliff Kingsbury. Feels like it's leaning towards Caleb Williams. Yeah, there's no point in delaying that. It seems like the move that is going to happen, most likely. That puts the Washington Commanders on the clock. Yes, this is a good opportunity to take a quarterback. And yes, Drake May is legitimately good at playing quarterback. And this could be a worthwhile move at number two overall. Drake May is probably hated on mostly because of the school that he played for, especially if you look at 2022 at North Carolina. He was phenomenal. 2023, there was a step back. I would say there's some solid understanding that his weapons weren't as potent at UNC this past season, even with Tez Walker coming in middle of the year. So statistically, maybe you look at this and you're not convinced. Watch him actually play. Drake May is good at playing quarterback. It's just true. Takes us to the Patriots here at number 3. There is a scenario where they take a wide receiver. I don't know how much I really buy that with Jared Mayo taking over as head coach, with the situation they have at quarterback, with the situation they have on the offensive line. To me, this is much more likely we see either a quarterback or a tackle. Now, how could I go quarterback if Caleb Williams, Drake May are already off the board? Well, it's looking more and more likely that Jaden Daniels is a legitimate contender to go in the top 5 of this draft. I'm going to go ahead and do that with the Patriots here. This would be a very new look Patriots offense. But obviously, quarterback's a very important position. And if you watch Jaden Daniels play this year, you know he is more than just an athlete. He is a great passer of the football and really worked on those mechanics this season at LSU. I don't have any problem giving Jaden Daniels his due as a top 5 overall pick, number 3 in this scenario. And that's what we did. So moving right along here, the Cardinals at 4. This has been connected so many times already. It makes too much sense. Marvin Harrison Jr. is here at 4. That should be the move for the Arizona Cardinals. And maybe number 5 is where the draft really gets going. Although I think a lot of signs are pointing to one particular direction right now, and that would be that they're looking for a tight end. So you have a tight end in this class that is maybe generational talent is thrown around too often anymore, which sounds crazy to say. Brock Bowers is a generational talent at tight end. And because there are 2 of them, Kyle Pitts being the other, in recent memory, that doesn't take away the fact that these are legitimately extremely talented tight ends. And I don't know that you have anything like that in your division, even assuming that Travis Kelce is done relatively soon. This puts the Chargers, going forward, this puts the Chargers in a whole other level as far as the offense is concerned. Also looking like they're going to get Greg Roman in as offensive coordinator, which he loves tight ends. And Brock Bowers would be the move then for several reasons. To me, maybe it's because of my age and when I grew up watching the Chargers. Part of their identity has always been having a great tight end. I know that's the Antonio Gates effect. He was just that good that I think of the Chargers. I think of having a great tight end now. But I do think it's important. I think that will help Justin Herbert quite a bit and will help the offense overall a lot. Number 6 here with the New York Giants. There are a lot of scenarios the Giants could play out here. And this is the actual first difficult decision on what to do, because there are some folks who believe Malik Neighbors to be a better wide receiver prospect than Marvin Harrison Jr. Watching both of them play, I still have Marvin Harrison Jr. as the better receiver. I do think there are some things that Malik Neighbors does better, but Marvin Harrison Jr. as a complete package is the number 1 receiver prospect. Malik Neighbors is a little bit faster and more of a deep threat, whereas Marvin Harrison Jr. is a technician and taller and really physical and just so crisp and somehow a fluid technician, which is insane. That's why he's a top 5 pick at wide receiver. Malik Neighbors is really good at those things as well. Also a like a true deep threat kind of a guy. But then too, you have to consider the offensive line here because of just how mediocre it has been. I understand you have a couple of pieces. Maybe if you're looking to draft offensive line, you're more focused on the interior than the tackles right now, which would make the first round pick lean receiver instead of offensive line. I'm going to go ahead and take Neighbors because of that, though I think offensive line could have been at play there, which does bring us to the Titans. And this has to be a tackle. This has needed to be a tackle for 3 years. If it's not a tackle, we might see another coach and GM very quickly. We have a couple of great options if we're looking to take a tackle. Joe Alt is considered the best of the bunch by many, and watching him play this season can certainly understand why. Just next level as a pass protector. True mauler. Olu Fashanu out of Penn State. Probably a little bit more raw. Is a couple of years younger, though. You can work with that. Also, I would say has the athletic profile to do all sorts of crazy things for you that maybe a Joe Alt can't do. Now, I don't know how much you're really going to want to be moving your tackles around like you would a guard, but Olu Fashanu can do some of those types of things just because he is so athletic at tackle, at the size of a tackle, which is crazy useful, right? But you also have Talisé Fuaga out of Oregon State, who we already know from watching him play Oregon State, one of the better run blockers in the game at his level. Watching him at the Senior Bowl, he really demonstrates a very high level of pass protection as well. What do you want your identity to be as the Tennessee Titans? Because to me, this comes down to, do you want run blocking, pass blocking, or potential? The Titans are basically starting over, except for a 30-year-old Derrick Henry. If you want to keep building with Derrick Henry, there is a scenario at number 7. I go ahead and take Talisé Fuaga. However, the way the Titans traditionally build things, they're more likely to go with a Joe Alt here. It's such a Titans move. Get the experienced guy, get the guy who can come in and probably be in contention for a Pro Bowl slot immediately. That is Joe Alt in this class. Nothing wrong with that. I'm saying it does depend on what your identity is going to be going forward. I'm going to go ahead and take Joe Alt here. I do think he is the best tackle in this class. I just wanted to point out there are some great tackles in this class, and we might see a lot of them in this no trades first round here. But next up is the Atlanta Falcons. There was a time there, and I think last time I did a mock draft on Twitch here, we had a quarterback going to them at number 8. But we've had 3 quarterbacks already taken. There is not another quarterback worthy of going in the top 10 this year. So, where do you pivot? There are some good receivers available. There are some good defensive backs available. There are some good defensive linemen available. And you just got Raheem Morris, which makes me think you're going to want to focus on defense immediately. I don't remember the last time that the Atlanta Falcons actually had a dominant pass rush. It's probably happened before, but not that recently, which makes me want to go with an edge rusher. However, maybe there is a scenario where the best pass rusher is not on the edge. And that might be the case in this class, as crazy as that sounds. Jerzon Newton out of Illinois is a legitimately fantastic player. And I believe he has the ability to play inside or outside at the next level simply because of his size. But his pass rushing technique and ability are at the level where you can put him on the outside and do so comfortably in a pass rushing role. I don't know that the Falcons need an interior guy, but this sets you up in the event that maybe your defensive tackles leave in free agency. Maybe you're looking in a different direction in the next couple of years and you want to build up that pass rushing presence, but there is nobody like Jerzon Newton available in the future. And I think that's very possible. I don't know why I just opened up Fuaga. Didn't mean to. We're going to draft Johnny Newton here at number 8, which is the highest I've seen him go in some time. But I believe he's worth it. So let's keep going here. Number 9 overall, the Chicago Bears. You just took Caleb Williams. Let's get somebody opposite of DJ Moore. Makes a ton of sense to go Rome Odunze here to have a very exciting pass catching duo for your new quarterback. We can address offensive line later, very possibly. There are other positions of need here. I think the defense is more of a project than the offense is, and to build up confidence and like actually create some stability on the offensive side of the ball for the next couple of years, you want to get that going, right? If you're drafting a quarterback this year, set that guy up for success. We're going to take Rome Odunze here at number 9. Best deep threat receiver in this class. Absolutely worth a top 10 pick here. Opposite of DJ Moore, this receiving room is suddenly really, really solid. So no qualms with that. I'm just saying, yes, they have needs on defense. Let's build up one side of the ball at a time, maybe, and get some actual faith and confidence in this offense. So that puts the Jets in an interesting scenario because I legitimately do believe they would love to take a receiver here. I don't know that there's a receiver past the top 3 of Harrison, Neighbors, and Odunze that's worthy of a top 10 pick. And you have other needs. So let's go for what we need here and what's available. I'm going back to offensive tackle here. And I'm getting the guy who has the athletic profile to do a little bit of everything. That is Olu Fashanu. Wherever you need him to play, he can play it, and he is moldable still. He is young enough still that you can do whatever you need to and set your offensive line up for long-term sustained success with a guy like Olu Fashanu at number 10 overall. Moving on to the Minnesota Vikings here. Every single time I get to the Vikings, I'm like, do I want to do something crazy with them? Do I want to go absolutely normal? I don't know. The best course of action for the Vikings every time. I've said this a couple of years now. If you've watched our previous mock drafts, to me, this should be somebody in the front 7. I am going to make the claim to you. Take this as you will. Dallas Turner is the better player. I think Jared Verse probably fits the Vikings better. Which I feel like I should be able to justify in some way. This is a little bit of a gut feeling. Verse feels like a Viking more than Turner does. maybe that's all the justification I need right now. I'll come back to you. I'm going to take Jared Verse with the Vikings here. I think you can be happy with that selection. That does take us to the Denver Broncos, where it's a similar situation where there are a lot of potential positions of need. What do you value in this spot? I guess this is back-to-back edge rushers. There is a scenario. I'm gonna do it this way. There is a scenario where Laiatu Latu is actually graded higher than Dallas Turner, who I just said I think he's better than Jared Verse overall. In a lot of ways, Laiatu Latu's the best edge rusher in this class, at least based on 2023 and what I remember of him in 2022. The concern with him is medical. So this will come down to the combine and interview process, but especially the medicals at the NFL combine. If Laiatu Latu is cleared, he will be a pretty high draft pick. This does leave potentially like up there as the best edge rusher in this class on the board. Combination of those two senses. Still out there in Dallas Turner, but Laiatu Latu is phenomenal, and this gives them an edge rushing presence that they desperately need. He can stand up as well, not just be on the line. Though I wouldn't put him in coverage. Just as an edge rusher, he can play in the 3-4, the 4-3. Laiatu Latu is really good. I love it when I can just justify it by saying, trust me, he's really good. But it's true, so I don't feel too bad about it. The Las Vegas Raiders next up here. It's another team desperately in need of a quarterback, but not really going to find one worth drafting at 13. I am thinking of the potential of drafting a tackle if I'm the Raiders. Now, your offensive line as a whole is getting older, other than maybe like Colton Miller, but I would want somebody with flexibility to play either side. And actually, I'm probably drafting a right tackle if I'm drafting anything with them, which means I'm going to lean J.C. Latham. Now, this is the cool thing about mock draft scenarios, right? I have already basically said I thought Taliese Fuaga was in contention for me to go at number 7 overall. And now, at best, he can be the 4th tackle off the board. This is how the draft works, right? You can be one of the best players at your position, depending on fit, depending on need. A lot of things can happen, and all it takes is one team to like you enough to pull the trigger. So anything's possible, but things can get pretty crazy pretty quickly. Taliese Fuaga is still here for the Saints, though, which is tempting. You know, who else is very tempting right now is Dallas Turner. Yeah, we're gonna do it. Fuaga to the Saints here. They do need youth at basically every position on their team. Fuaga sets them up. They already have an interior of that offensive line for quite some time in the future. The interior is great. They need tackles. Fuaga is, I've already said, he's one of the better tackles in this class from a run blocking standpoint. And if you watch the Senior Bowl, he has proven that he has pass protecting ability as well, though he didn't need to demonstrate it as much at Oregon State. So that is 4 tackles off the board for the first 14 picks this draft. you're going to notice a trend here. There's some big dudes in the trenches getting moved in this mock. Takes us to the Indianapolis Colts. Based on their needs, where they're picking, what they look for, this screams Terrion Arnold to me. Terrion Arnold is the often, at times during the season, often overlooked second corner of the Alabama team last year. Kool-Aid McKinstry was the known quantity, and he didn't get targeted as frequently. Terrion Arnold got targeted more and actually allowed less. So Terrion Arnold is very potentially the first corner taken in this class, even though Kool-Aid McKinstry was the talked about candidate at corner all this season. And Arnold just fits like the Colts profile and who they look to draft. These atypical just athletes who are able to carry out the technicals of the position at a high level because of their athleticism. The traits that they bring to the position are not necessarily the stereotypical traits, but they are able to, you know what I mean, right? Their athletic profile is not necessarily the mold, but they're athletic enough to overcome those potential challenges, right? Seattle Seahawks here. I really love the thought of giving them an edge rusher. And Dallas Turner is right here for the taking. And I've kept talking about him. However, based off of their draft last year, I think they've come to the realization that offensive line is worth drafting pretty high. And so are corners when you need them, right? There is one center in this class who I have loved for a long time, and people are starting to catch on in a big way. That is Jackson Powers Johnson out of Oregon. We're going to have him go to the Seattle Seahawks here. JPJ is such a beast, dude. He can play guard if he needs to. I don't know that I want to move him out of the center role because he is so dang good at playing center, and it's legitimately a tough position to pull off successfully. So when you have a guy who can do it at this high of a level, why mess that up? But Jackson Powers Johnson can bulldoze people and has the lateral quickness and agility to stay with you even more than he will really need to as an interior offensive lineman. So let's take the interior here at center and let's boost the let's boost the interior offensive linemen in this class. I don't think they're getting enough love. So if you're keeping track, though, this is what now the 5th offensive lineman off the board so far, and we're only at pick 16. So yes, we are the big dudes in the trenches. This is also, I believe, fairly realistic. These guys are phenomenal, and especially after a couple of COVID years, we're getting some older prospects in the class. Those older prospects, usually the best ones you're looking for when you're coming to older prospects, will be offensive tackles, interior offensive linemen who have had time to develop in college. So maybe the quarterbacks leave early, the receivers leave early, the offensive linemen stay 5-6 years, and now with COVID class, we're getting some older guys, Joe Alt, Jackson Powers Johnson, who have been there a minute and have really learned and perfected the trade and are coming in ready to play offensive line in the NFL. So Jacksonville Jaguars, I don't know that we have an offensive lineman to give them necessarily, though there are some questions around their tackles. And really, I think Amarius Mims could be good for them. I am going to go ahead and give them Dallas Turner here. I know they have invested heavily in the edge rusher position recently. They have a couple of guys that they've drafted in the first round off the edge already. But you're looking at Josh Allen potentially leaving in free agency. And even if Josh Allen stays, it is impossible in the NFL to have too much coming off the edge. So let's go ahead and give them Dallas Turner here. He falls to 17 for me. That is a fall. I think he's better than the number 17 prospect in this class. But with what's on the board, with how this is going with offensive linemen, some of the edge rushers are falling. And you're seeing these cornerbacks fall too. I have a lot of defensive backs here, according to PFF, that should have gone already. We'll get there in time. I think the team needs and the positional value dictates the Bengals here might take another tackle. So looking at the tackles, there are a couple of good options. This is maybe a tier down, right? So we're looking at the Joe Alt, Olufushanu, Tulisa Fuaga tier of tackles. Sure, you're not getting that level of guy who you expect to come in and compete for a Pro Bowl slot in year one. But at this tier, you're getting a guy who you do expect you can plug and play and develop into a Pro Bowl contender in the very near future. I'm still comfortable drafting a guy like that in the first round. Call me crazy. I think you get an instant starter that's worth taking early. So, again, though, with this tier of tackles, you kind of have to look at what your identity is and what you want to do with that position. Are you looking for a pure pass protector? Are you looking for a developmental guy who can play either side of the ball? Are you looking for the athletic profile? Are you looking for a run blocking mauler at tackle? These guys can fill different roles depending on what exactly you're looking for. I think Mims, Tyler Guyton, Troy Fautanu, I think Kieran Amageji is in that tier as well. Patrick Paul is close. I skipped over Jordan Morgan. He's on the edge to me. PFF has him graded higher than I think I do right now. And Graham Barton, I skipped over him as well. I still very much see the potential of him moving inside to guard. So it's a different conversation with Barton. As far as the tackles are concerned, though, look at what the Bengals like to do. They have Joe Burrow. They've invested heavily in wide receiver. It's obvious they're a passing team. I don't want to give them the run blocking mauler then. So I think I'm going to go with Tyler Guyton out of Oklahoma to be their tackle pick at number 18. Not to say that Guyton is necessarily better than Mims or insert your favorite tackle out of that list. But I do believe that the style of play fits what the Bengals do better. So we're going with Tyler Guyton, which brings up the LA Rams at 19, who kind of like the Saints to me, just need to get younger at basically every position, which is a cool spot to be in when it comes to the draft. You can just take whoever your favorite guy is on the board at any given time. Just best player available all the way. Best player available to me on the board right now is actually, it depends on what you want. I don't know for sure if Cooper DeJean will be a corner in the NFL. I kind of like that flexibility, though. It is very possible that Cooper DeJean gets moved back to safety just because his top end speed isn't the same as some of the other corners you'd be looking for. That being said, his cover ability is phenomenal, and I don't have any problem throwing him back there in a safety role immediately. If you want a corner, my favorite corner right now, who's left on the board, is Nate Wiggins. We're going to go with Cooper DeJean. That all around ability at defensive back is valuable, and if you want to line him up at safety, he can definitely do that. So that's my thought there. The Pittsburgh Steelers. There is potential that they take a tackle. However, I agree with PFF here that interior is probably a more pressing need. This to me comes down to two guys, and I honestly right now don't know what I'm going to do. So I'm going to talk through this. We're going to come up with this live. So I can definitely see Amarius Mims being a Pittsburgh Steeler. Makes a lot of sense to me. Just a huge guy. They already have a Georgia tackle that they took last year. Get his teammate. He can play right tackle. And Amarius Mims is great at right tackle when he's healthy. I don't believe the injury will be a concern going forward, though obviously he did miss some time in 2023. The other option here to me is Zach Frazier. Not a pure mauler at center in the same way that JPJ is, who we had going to the Seahawks earlier, but such a gifted technician of a blocker. Just sound at everything you would want your center to be able to do, which feels like a Steelers thing to do, is take a guy like that. At the same time, actually, another pretty Steelers move would be to go ahead and take Quinyon Mitchell here, the corner out of Toledo. If you didn't catch any of the Senior Bowl, you might not be convinced on Quinyon Mitchell just because he is from Toledo. Go watch him play against some of those better receivers in this draft class. Yeah, he's legit. Sincerely up there as one of the best corners in this class. And the athletic profile definitely fits playing corner at a high level in the NFL. I kind of want to keep the train going, though, with offensive line. And between the three options I've laid out here, I think Amarius Mims is the more likely of those three right now to me. So it is another first-round tackle for the Steelers. Here's something, though, that you have to consider. The Pittsburgh Steelers are such a traditional organization. They appreciate the trenches almost to a fault, right? And I love them for it. I hated them for it when I was a Browns fan back in the day. But you just have to respect that. And if you want Kenny Pickett to work, it's the opposite formula the Bengals had, right? And we've seen how that's gone so far. If you want your rookie quarterback to work, build up the trenches first, then figure out the weapons as opposed to weapons before line, because this way you protect the guy, give him time to figure it out. So I also actually see a scenario where Mims moves inside to guard. It is much less likely than like a Graham Barton, just because Mims is so physically large. It's hard to play that kind of a guy at guard, but he has the ability to do that if you needed him to. And maybe some of that flexibility is worth the part of the consideration. So the Miami Dolphins up next. They have an aging tackle on that line. It is worth looking at a replacement in the future. It is also worth looking on the defensive side of the ball, except for defensive back. And the positions of value right now are around this range of the draft are probably more defensive backs. Do you need Byron Murphy as much as you need some help on the offensive line? Do you need this tier down of edge rushers, the Braswell, Ellis, Robinson, as much as you need help on the offensive line? I would say probably not. Which takes us back to that tier conversation of tackles. What do you want to do with your tackles at the NFL level? Based on how the Dolphins operated this past season, I would again say they're a pretty pass heavy team. I'm looking at Troy Fautanu here for the Miami Dolphins over a Jordan Morgan or Kieran Amakeji. Troy Fautanu and that entire Washington front, just one of the best offensive lines in the country this past season, specifically in pass protection. And this gives the Dolphins some insurance, not assurance, I guess both, for the long-term future of that offensive line. And we've seen already multiple instances of why you need to protect Tua. So make sure your trenches are settled. Takes us to the Philadelphia Eagles. Yeah, corner is a massive need in my mind for the Eagles. Would also say there is some potential for the interior of the offensive line. Not exactly sure who you're going to replace Jason Kelce with, though in my mind, it makes a lot of sense to just slide over Landon Dickerson, who played center at Alabama. That then leaves a hole at guard, right? So who do you fill that role at guard with? Or do you want to leave Landon Dickerson at guard because he's been so great at that guard position for you? I don't know that there's another center worthy of the first round other than JPJ and the potential of the West Virginia guy, Frazier. So that's as possible. But with the corners falling like they have, I don't see any way you go anywhere other than either Nate Wiggins or Quinion Mitchell here for the Philadelphia Eagles if they both fall to you. To me, there is a separation between these two. I would take Nate Wiggins over Quinion Mitchell, though I like Quinion Mitchell a lot. If they're both in front of me, I'm taking Nate Wiggins. So that's what we're going to do with the Eagles at 22. Corners have fallen quite a ways. Time to stop some of that. The Houston Texans here at 23. Their defense was built on the backs of free agency, which is terrifying to me if I'm a Texans fan or in the front office, because we're probably losing a lot of that production and a lot of that leadership. But also, we need long-term solutions at those positions. You also do have to consider there's a defensive guy head coach. So with the offense as effective as it was last year, the thought can very easily become, let's solidify the side of the ball that I know, right? So the defensive side of the ball needs to get better. And I can identify those things easier, right? That screams to me, let's look at edge rusher to play opposite of Will Anderson, if I can find it. Or even linebacker, where I think you're losing two guys to free agency. I mean, you could re-sign them for sure, but it's very possible that you're without your linebacking core next year that you had in 2023. I don't hate the idea of like a Darius Robinson there. I'm talking myself into a linebacker. Um, and there are two linebackers that I do like quite a bit in this class. That would be Edgerrin Cooper and Jeremiah Trotter. Love Peyton Wilson. Medical concerns. I'm not taking him around 1. I could convince myself Edgerrin Cooper or Jeremiah Trotter, either one of them, being around 1 kind of a guy. I think we're going to go for the we're going to say that safety is settled. So I don't need a coverage linebacker as much, which points me towards getting Edgerrin Cooper. Jeremiah Trotter to me is the classic Clemson mold of a great coverage linebacker, which is awesome. And you need those kind of a guy, those kind of guys. But if your defense is set up to handle having a pure linebacker, a fast guy who can plug holes, can pass, or can rush the passer when needed, that is so valuable when you have that kind of a guy who can play that position at a high level. Edgerrin Cooper can do that. So I was a linebacker in round 1. It happens every year. Everybody talks about how linebacker isn't that valuable. BFF doesn't have him graded that highly. It happens every year. Somebody will take a linebacker. Why not the Texans, who have a defensive coach and love linebackers anyway? So takes us to the Dallas Cowboys. Man, it'd be fun to give them Quinion Mitchell, wouldn't it? That could make quite a bit of sense. However, I'm going to take the approach that the trenches are what matters most to the Cowboys. And I'm going to go ahead and take the defensive tackle Byron Murphy here. So I agree with the assessment that the Cowboys need somebody on the other side of the ball, right? It's like they only have one good corner at the moment. But they've also been really trying to get a legitimate defensive line for several years, it feels like now. And just been missing something. Get them a huge guy who does everything you could ask of a defensive tackle and can be out there, I don't know, 3 downs, all 3 downs. That's Byron Murphy to me. So it's cool that he's also a Texas player. People talk about that as if Jerry Jones cares, which is amusing to me every year. I don't believe that it really does. It works out, though, in this case, and it is cool. Did that influence my decision? I'm not going to say. I think you can tell. All right. The Green Bay Packers here. I'm already filtering the tackle. I think this should be obvious. They need tackle. They need somebody who they can rely on to not be hurt all the time to play tackle for them. Jordan Morgan's here. I think that fits very well, actually. We're going to go with Jordan Morgan. Just an all-around tackle. I don't know that he's particularly a standout in either pass or run blocking. There's no problem with that. I don't mean that in a bad way at all. I mean, he is a well-rounded tackle to me, and that feels like a Packers move. Get somebody who can do everything. Somebody who's capable of whatever you need him to be capable of at the time, which brings us up to how many offensive linemen now? I don't even know. I'll count it later. Let's move on to the Tampa Bay Buccaneers. Another team that feels like they could stand to get younger at almost every position. So, do we reach for a position of immediate need? Or do we just take what's in front of us? Because to me, what's in front of us are two very intriguing options in Braylon Trice and Quinion Mitchell. If I'm looking to fill a position of need, though, I would be interested in taking Graham Barton here because of his flexibility inside and the fact that he has tackle experience if I needed that. I don't think that I do if I'm the Buccaneers, but I like his flexibility. Brian Thomas here actually makes sense in a lot of ways too, because of how old Mike Evans is. I mean, it is a reality that he will not be there forever. But I think we're going to hold off on receiver and go ahead and take. Man, I'm really stalling here, aren't I? Let's go ahead and take Braylon Trice here. Yeah, that defensive front could use some speed, and Braylon Trice can bring that to you in a big way. Man, the real pass rushing threat alongside a guy like Vita Vea, just eating up three guys in the middle. That gets scary. That's part of the reason the Buccaneers were so good with Tom Brady. I know everybody attributes it to Tom Brady, but that was the year where like the edge rushing clicked alongside having two great defensive tackles. That front was phenomenal when they won the Super Bowl. Let's rebuild some of that for the Buccaneers here. All right, the Cardinals back on the clock. They took Marvin Harrison Jr. at the top of this draft. They need so many other things. But we're not taking another receiver, obviously. I am very tempted to give the Cardinals another offensive lineman. I know they took Paris Johnson, number 6 overall last year. I could see one of these three guys on your screen here. Amagagi out of Yale, Barton out of Duke, or Paul out of Houston, actually fitting very well. And you can plug one of them in on the other side of Paris Johnson at tackle, or you can slide inside one of these guys to guard and just beef up that offensive line. At the same time, I think there are other positions that might be a bit more valuable in this spot. You're not going to get the level of corner in the next round that you're looking at right here with Quinion Mitchell and Kool-Aid McKinstry staring right at you. So I am going to go ahead and stop the mini slide of Quinion Mitchell according to PFF rankings and give the Cardinals a legitimately a physical specimen at the cornerback position in Quinion Mitchell. Watch this dude play if you haven't. It is something to see. Dude is really legitimately great at playing corner. He comes from Toledo. That shouldn't scare you. Buffalo Bills on the clock. I agree with this assessment. They need wide receiver and tackle very badly. I would also say they need safety very badly. I don't know that there's a safety anywhere close to this range that is worth it. Although I like Tyler Nubin a lot, I don't want to take him in the first round, which gives me the option here to go Brian Thomas or one of those tackles that we've already talked about. If I look at the tackles here, this doesn't excite me if I'm the Buffalo Bills. Which means I'm going to go with the option that does excite me in Brian Thomas Jr. There was a legitimate case that Brian Thomas Jr. was a better receiver than Malik Nabers. I don't mean legitimate and like when you watch them play, the athletic profile is so similar. I mean, in terms of production, Brian Thomas Jr. was open and targeted and caught the ball just as much as Nabers. So when when you look at the stat lines, it can be a little bit deceiving. Neighbors is better overall, but Brian Thomas Jr. is a legitimately great wide receiver and can be your solid 2 that the Bills really haven't had. I don't know. I can't name a time that they've had a legitimate number 2 receiver with Stephon Diggs, which could be what unlocks this offense. It's something that has been talked about for a little while with the Bills, that they need something else to juice up that offense. So Brian Thomas here makes a lot of sense for the Bills, and also I like getting Brian Thomas into that first round conversation. I think he is worthy of that. The Detroit Lions here. They have proven that they don't care what people think about positional value. They go out and get fun players, which makes it very tempting to me to follow their line of thinking and just go ahead and grab T'Vondre Sweat, a guy who we know is going to be sensational at a niche role, positional role. He is not a 3-down defensive lineman. He is a 1 or 2 down a position kind of a guy who will rotate in and just obliterate the offensive line every opportunity. The man is like as heavy as I am and moves a hell of a lot faster than I do. So I say that though, I don't really know that T'Vondre Sweat is like. I think there are better options for the Lions at 29. Though I think that would be very fun for a lot of reasons. Let's go with something a little bit more realistic. I do think corner could be a position worth looking into. Now, Kool-Aid McKinstry is still on the board here. I like Lassiter more than I like Rakestraw comparing to the PFF board. I like TJ Tampa a lot. Jarvis Brownlee actually looked very impressive at the Senior Bowl and might be moving up some boards relatively soon out of Louisville. But let's go ahead and take Kool-Aid McKinstry here and just build out that secondary. Felt like that was one of the things that would have helped the Lions a lot down the stretch, is if that secondary was just a bit beefier, a bit more experience would help, but faster and hit harder, right? And how you have Brian Branch and Kool-Aid McKinstry in the same backfield, that gets terrifying pretty quickly for offenses. So, looking at the Baltimore Ravens, news today, they might need a new receiver. You know what happened to Zay Flowers? We're not going to talk about it. We're just gonna do a very Ravens thing and ignore the entire situation and not even draft a receiver. It's a very Ravens move. Let's take a look at the trenches. Yeah. Yep, I'm going to do it. I'm going to give them Darius Robinson here, which, according to the PFF board, I don't think too many people are going to like. I think Darius Robinson fits the Ravens very well for a couple of reasons. Number one being that they've been in search of a long-term answer at edge rusher for quite some time. And they had some guys come through free agency. Some have hit moderately, some have not. Let's draft a guy who has the mold, the size that you look for if you're the Ravens, the kind of profile that they looked for in free agency. Let's get that guy in the draft, and let's actually mold the guy the way that the Ravens do. That's somebody that looks like Darius Robinson to me. Um, when you watch Missouri play, I don't know that the defense is the first thing that would catch your eye if you're just sitting down to watch a Missouri game. But Darius Robinson in himself has a very successful against almost every blocker he has faced. He has an arsenal of moves to get around basically every kind of attack from a tackle. So it's an interesting move compared to what I think they really need, but also it's a very Ravens move. It's the kind of thing that keeps the Ravens. So let's do it. The Kansas City Chiefs up next. I mean, everybody with an eye or two, hopefully, not necessarily, can tell that they really need help at wide receiver, like pretty desperately, I would say, at this point. And there are some good options. Like, I'm not convinced that Troy Franklin is the best answer. I know he was like a 1,400-yard receiver this season at Oregon. I don't know that really fits most teams, like his style of play. I do, however, think it really fits with the Kansas City Chiefs. Just as a guy you can set on the outside, let him run free, and just tell Mahomes, figure out a way to hit the guy down the field. And Troy Franklin will run under the ball somehow. And I think that would work wonders for the Chiefs. I legitimately don't believe Troy Franklin is a good fit for every team. Like, if you want technicians at the wide receiver position, if you are the Saints and just draft wide receivers to run slants all the time, maybe Troy Franklin's not the guy for you. But a pure deep threat who can just find his way under the ball 50 yards down the field. Troy Franklin did that quite a bit this past season and could be very fun with the Kansas City Chiefs, depending on your view of that. If you like watching the Chiefs win games, then it would be very fun. The San Francisco 49ers. Yeah, I could definitely see them going Kamari Lassiter here. That's like one of my big hangups is that Kamari Lassiter's right here. It is so possible. However, I believe that they need an answer at tackle. And I know their left tackle is like 36, 37 years old. He's not even slowing down too much yet. But you need a long-term solution there you can rely on for the future, especially with your young quarterback. You want to keep Brock Purdy going, get some continuity on the offensive line, get somebody to come in and learn the position, maybe even get somebody who can start immediately, but then slide over when the time comes that he needs to play the tackle position. I am describing perfectly a guy who is in this range and available, Graham Barton. I believe he has the ability to play tackle at the NFL level, but it is also very possible he moves inside. He can start at guard for you right now and learn how to play tackle going forward and be your answer at left tackle for the future. So that's my pick for the 49ers. And I want to count this because I didn't prepare for this all that much beforehand. So I don't know the answer to this yet. How many tackles did I take here? Alt Fashanu, Latham, Fuaga, Guyton, Mims, Fautanu, Morgan, Barton. That is 9 offensive tackles That would be an NFL record for tackles in the first round. Add in Jackson Powers Johnson, that is 10 offensive linemen in this first round mock draft. Add in Johnny Newton, Byron Murphy, Darius Robinson, Dallas Turner, Jared Verse. That's like 14 trenches guys. I'm not counting Laiatu Latu as a hand in the dirt defensive lineman here. I think Verse and Turner will be. I don't know that Braylon Trice will be either. Now that I'm thinking about it that way. Yeah, let's call Laiatu Latu and Braylon Trice kind of stand up edge rushing linebackers. So that gives me like 14 trenches guys in this first round, which feels good. I like that. So I'm going to copy this and I'm going to throw it in the Discord. If you guys aren't in the Discord, we post stuff there all the time, me and my co-hosts. So check us out at the Discord, which link's been scrolling across the bottom of the screen. Find the channel to put it in. That'd be cool if I could do that. There it is. All right, there we go. Now my plan is I spent an hour talking about a first round mock draft, no trades. I'm going to go completely nuts and power through a weird one with you guys. And this will be the last one before I shut the stream down for the night. We're gonna do some trades. All right. In this scenario, we're gonna say that Justin Fields is the starting quarterback for the Chicago Bears in 2024. They believe in their guy, and they're going to make sure that they're set for the future. We're going to trade with the New England Patriots. The Patriots are going to move up for the number 1 overall pick. Now, this is like nuts. All right, we're going to do this in the draft because it's easier to do it this way, actually. All right, so the Patriots do want to move up anyway, so that works. I don't know how like packages really work. Like, I don't know what the actual value of whatever the trade's going to be. It's going to be a lot of draft capital. Move down to number 3. It's probably even more than what I just did. Like a first round pick this year, next year, second round pick next year. It might be 3 first round picks. Like it's a lot. So in this scenario, the New England Patriots just traded up to number 1 overall. We're going to give them Caleb Williams at 1 to the New England Patriots. The Commanders stayed put. They're getting Drake May. They're okay with that. The Chicago Bears stayed ahead of the Arizona Cardinals to get their guy to pair with their quarterback of 2024 in this scenario, Justin Fields, and that's Marvin Harrison Jr. Now, the Cardinals are, they're not thrilled about it. Malik Neighbors, I've already said there are some people who think Neighbors is just as good, if not better than Harrison anyway. Neighbors is still the pick here. That gives 2 receivers in the top 5, though. The top 4, which is crazy to some extent, but also makes sense. Now, the Chargers here are in a position to trade down then because there's still a quarterback on the board, and the guy that the Chargers really want is probably not the same guy that these next teams are going to be looking at drafting. I'm talking about still getting Brock Bowers for the Chargers, but we can trade down and still do that. So the Atlanta Falcons is perfect. That's the team I was thinking of trading with anyway. I'm just trying to get this to work. I don't know what this would actually look like in real life. That's not the point of this, making the packages, work out perfectly. But the Falcons move up to number 5 because Jaden Daniels is still on the board. They get their quarterback of the future at 5. I think that would be awesome for them in the scenario where only 2 quarterbacks get taken to the top. The Falcons can jump up and get the guy that was projected to be available for them at number 8 if they wanted to, not that long ago. But now Daniels falls now to 5 for them to pick up. The Giants are in my last scenario, went with Malik Nabers. I'm not convinced that they would take a guy like Odunze. Odunze is like the super version of Troy Franklin, who we just talked about with the Chiefs, like that pure deep threat guy who can just run, find his way, and get under the ball down the field. Odunze is sensational at that. He's really like good all around. That's his bread and butter. And that's not what the Giants are able to do with Daniel Jones. So in this scenario, we're not taking a receiver then because Malik Nabers isn't here. It would be Rome Odunze instead. So in this trade scenario now, we're looking at probably we're looking at an Olu Fashanu for the Giants in this scenario in my mind. Because of his athletic profile, because of his ability to do, be a sensational run blocker, but also be a lead blocker for a guy like Saquon. So just re-sign Saquon and let him run behind Fashanu all the time. That could be very successful for you. I'm not changing anything with the Titans. We're going Joe Alt again at 7. Works out very well. And I don't want to trade down any further with the Chargers because now we're running into, if I trade down too much further, Brock Bowers will get scooped up at some point. So let's go ahead and take him at 8. Now the Bears are back on the clock at 9. We already took a receiver, Marvin Harrison Jr. I don't want to take another receiver. And also, in my mind here, what I'm looking for instead of receiver is I'm looking for an interior offensive lineman. I don't want to pick that guy at number 9. So I'm going to trade down. This works out pretty well, I would think. The Rams are looking to move up here. So, again, not really trying to make the package work perfectly. I just want to move the Rams up to number 9 here. And they're able to take I had to think about it. But yes, I am taking Jer'Zhan Newton with the Rams at 9. They trade up to be able to do it. This is actually, people are going to kill me if I don't say this the right way. All right. I'm not trying to insinuate that Johnny Newton is as good as Aaron Donald or even has the potential to be the best defensive player of all time, like Aaron Donald probably is. What I am saying is Johnny Newton has the ability to play in a similar role as Aaron Donald and can learn a lot from Aaron Donald. So when you have a guy who has already talked about potentially retiring, why not draft the guy who has some of those traits, can learn from your experienced veteran, and then when Aaron Donald does retire, you don't have to change schemes. That's what Johnny Newton provides here. A pass rushing guy who can play on the interior if you need him to, has flexibility to play the 3-4 end role like Aaron Donald does already anyway a lot of the time, but can pass rush from the interior. So Johnny Newton fits the Rams perfectly from a schematic point of view, and they trade up to be able to get him at 9, which lets the Bears move down and reevaluate some of the positions later down the board. Now the Jets here at 10, I am actually going to go ahead and take Rome Odunze here. Not a whole lot of weapons on the Jets roster, and you have Aaron Rodgers back. Let's get somebody who can go and catch an Aaron Rodgers pass down the field, right? And if your pick at tackle is gone, let's go ahead and get some weapons for your quarterback. Now, the Vikings are a team that I love to trade down with every year. I actually don't want to do that in this situation, though. I want to mix things up, though. I'm going to go ahead and take Cooper DeJean here with the Vikings. Now, this is under the scenario where I don't know what you need as far as a nickel, a pure outside corner, if you need a complementary safety to Kyle Hamilton. What do you need Cooper DeJean to do for you? That's the cool part about a player like Cooper DeJean. I think he can fill almost any role that you need him to in that scenario. So if you're going to draft a pure corner like a Nate Wiggins, that limits your options down the line. If you're going to draft a pure safety in the second round, third round, that limits your options. Get a guy like Cooper DeJean who can do a little bit of everything, and now your options are wide open. You can fill that guy in wherever you need to. That would make a lot of sense for a team like the Vikings, who has historically liked to draft very versatile players. Cooper DeJean fits that mold pretty well. Takes us to the Denver Broncos, who last time I gave Latu. In this scenario, I think I'm going to go ahead and give them the first pure corner off the board in a lot of ways. That's, again, I'm saying Cooper DeJean isn't necessarily a corner at the next level. Let's give Terrion Arnold to the Denver Broncos. This gives them one of the best young corner duos in the NFL, assuming Arnold works out, which is, nobody can guarantee that. But if he and Pat Surtain are firing on all cylinders, that cornerback duo is legitimately one of the best in the league very quickly. So takes us to the Las Vegas Raiders, and this is honestly the perfect fit for the Raiders in Talisha Fuaga. I know I gave them J.C. Latham last time. I think Fuaga fits them just as well, if not better, in a lot of ways. In this scenario, they re-sign Josh Jacobs and make that the focus of their build. In the scenario where they look to, if they find a way to sign a quarterback, I don't know who they would get. I don't know who's available. If they want to build around the pass game, Fuaga maybe isn't the best option, although I have been trying to say I believe he can do that at a high level. This is the scenario where they want to build around the run game and really make that the focus and put Fuaga in front of anybody in that AFC West, and they're going to be able to run the ball very well. The New Orleans Saints on the clock now. I want to go with a defensive lineman because we haven't had these high-level edge rushers go off the board yet. I'm going to let Dallas Turner go here. Like I was saying in the last mock, I really do see Dallas Turner as better in some ways than Jared Verse. It's just a matter of fit. Dallas Turner is a really solid edge rusher and could probably fill a couple of different roles depending on what you needed from him. And the Saints need youth on the defensive line more than almost any other position. They need youth in a lot of areas, but defensive line especially. The Indianapolis Colts now are on the clock. I'm going to go ahead and give the Colts. This is an interesting question. Do I give the Colts a very traditional Colts style receiver? Do I give them the best all around receiver on the board? Or do I give them the best receiver that pairs with the skill set of Anthony Richardson? Because I think Ladd McConkey should be talked about more as a very potential first round wide receiver. Like, he is legitimately a technician as a route runner. He is smooth at it. He can break very naturally. He separates well, and he has hands. The concern with Ladd McConkey is that he hasn't proven at a high level that he can be like just a run after the catch guy. He was never asked to create a lot of offense by himself at Georgia. Georgia never does that with wide receivers. So why would you expect to find that out of a Georgia receiver? He has all the traits you could actually ask for, and he does them at a high level. But Brian Thomas is probably better at those things to some extent. And Troy Franklin probably fits better with your young quarterback. I think I want to go with Brian Thomas Jr. here just because I think he is the best overall receiver available. And I think the scenario where they go receiver is very interesting. They do need help at that position. It's something that they haven't had in a while. So Brian Thomas Jr. is a fantastic player. And I don't know that I've seen him go as high as 15 anywhere before. So maybe I'm breaking some ground here. I don't know for sure if I am or not. I won't claim to be some, future teller with that. Let's go ahead and switch things up with the Seahawks as well. I took Jackson Powers-Johnson to the Seahawks earlier. I think with Jared Verse still on the board, that makes a ton of sense for the Seahawks. Build up those trenches still, just the other side of the ball. Get some pass rushing ability. And with Pete Carroll gone, it might really change the focus away from being a defense built from the back in to a more traditional build of a defense from the line out. I don't know for sure what's going to happen with that, but I think that's very possible. And get started with a very high level edge rusher in Jared Verse could be interesting. Takes us to the Jacksonville Jaguars. Yeah, with Nate Wiggins here, that is quite tempting. However, it is also very tempting to give them a center. And now, in this scenario, Jackson Powers-Johnson is still on the board. That feels like a really smart move to me. Which means it's probably not the Jaguars' move. Let's bite on corner because we have really three corners who are in the conversation in this range. Nate Wiggins still being on the board is a little bit of a fall, some would say still. I had him go at 22 last time. So 17 isn't that bad, but it is the fall to some extent. Quinyon Mitchell is phenomenal. And Kool-Aid McKinstry is still really good. And I feel like he's getting passed over to some extent on the basis of prospect fatigue. Though I do legitimately believe in Quinyon Mitchell and Nate Wiggins. Let's go ahead and go Nate Wiggins here. Yeah, that's a very Clemson team anyway, the Jaguars. Keep reinforcing that for the means. That gives a right tackle to the Bengals, which is one of their biggest positions of need anyway. J.C. Latham is a great right tackle. Just leave him there. I know there was the thought of him playing left tackle at Alabama in 2023, and then it didn't happen because they got Caden Proctor. Caden Proctor came in as a true freshman and played left tackle, and J.C. Latham got to stay at right tackle, where he was good anyway. And it is a transition when you have to switch sides. It's not an easy task to retrain yourself to think the opposite direction every time. But this will be a plug and play right tackle for the Bengals in J.C. Latham. Now the Chicago Bears are back on the clock at 19. I know we haven't had a trade in a while, but this is the trade. Who did I have trade up in that spot? This was the Rams moving up for Johnny Newton. That's right. So now they're at 19. I'm gonna say that they do re-sign in this scenario. The Bears do re-sign Johnson, the corner that they should have re-signed a year ago, given an extension a while ago. He is phenomenal. That doesn't solve your entire defensive back problem. You still need 2 corners to start all the time. Let's get Quinion Mitchell in there as well. And now it becomes one of the, I know I just said I'm making the Broncos one of the best, youngest defensive back duos in the league. Well, the Bears might have that too if they have Johnson and Mitchell back there at corner. Could be very fun. All right. Pittsburgh Steelers time. Ooh. I actually haven't thought about Jackson Powers Johnson to the Pittsburgh Steelers before right now. That feels like it makes sense to me. He feels like a Steeler in a lot of ways, just to beat you up, run you over kind of a guy. Yeah, I can see that. Jackson Powers Johnson is so good. I mean, he doesn't have to stick at center. I would keep him at center if I had the option of deciding what happens to him, but I'm not. I don't actually have that authority, so we'll see what happens. All right. If I wanted to trade here, the only team interested, I mean, I could force anything I wanted to, but I don't really want to have to do that. The Packers, the reason I'm thinking of a trade, I don't know for sure that the positions the Dolphins really need line up with who's on the board right now in this spot. Like, they're not going to take Laiatu Latu in my mind. They're not going to take Kool-Aid McKinstry. They're not going to take Braylon Trice. Mims doesn't exactly fit the style of offense. You don't need Troy Franklin. If we draft somebody here, it's like a Jordan Morgan, a Tyler Guyton, Troy Fautanu. Why do that at 21 when you have 3 options and you like all 3 of them and you can get value for moving down? I guess I am going to go ahead and do that with the Packers, actually, because part of that too is who are you trading up for? If you're the team trading up, I don't know what the trade package is. I'm just slapping things together until PFF says it looks okay. Some combination of that. The Dolphins move down to just a handful of spots. The Packers move up ahead of some teams that could be interested in Laiatu Latu in order to make sure they get Laiatu Latu, a young, great edge rusher who replaces some of the aging stand-up edge rushers that they have. So it becomes a strength for the long-term future of your defense that kind of, like I said, stand-up edge rusher position. And you get ahead of I think the Cowboys and the Texans could have very easily been in position to take a guy like Laiatu Latu. Maybe the Eagles as well. Although I'm not certain of that. But let's go ahead with the Eagles. I'm still going to take a corner here. I'm going to go ahead and get Kamari Lassiter. And it's not because of the Georgia meme with the Eagles. It is because I like Lassiter's press ability. And I don't know enough about Ennis Rakestraw. I'm just going to be straight up with everybody. I don't know enough about Rakestraw to be able to definitively say that he should be ranked higher than Kamari Lassiter. I watched Lassiter. I think very highly of Lassiter. So we're going to go with the Georgia guy to the Eagles. It does fit the meme. All right. Houston Texans here. I want to go defense still. I'm probably annoying a lot of folks with all this scrolling if you're watching live. But it's a way for me to think and try to talk at the same time. Just reading names and considering options. I do want to stick on the defensive side of the ball, but I don't want to go linebacker again because I'm not convinced that we see a linebacker that high. And I do think there are really solid players around this position in the draft. I think I'm going to go ahead and bite. Let's take Byron Murphy to the Texans. So one pick earlier in this than the last time. I don't know what you actually have long term in the middle of that defensive line if you're the Houston Texans. Outside of Will Anderson, who do you actually have for the long-term future? Now you have basically an entire defensive line ready to go. Plug in a replacement level player alongside Byron Murphy and Will Anderson. Your defensive line is going to be pretty good for a long time. The Dallas Cowboys. The Cowboys are a team that likes to reach, quote unquote, from time to time. And I could see them going down the board and just getting a guy that fits. I think a guy that really fits the Dallas Cowboys is TJ Tampa. I haven't heard him getting a lot of first round consideration, at least not very recently, but 6'2", 200 pounds, and good at the things that the Cowboys aren't good at right now. With like kind of the opposite corner of the corner that you have. So I think TJ Tampa maybe isn't actually the best corner available in this spot, but gives the Cowboys something that they don't have. And that in itself is very valuable. The Miami Dolphins are back on the clock. And nobody's offering them this time. I'm going to go ahead and give him Jordan Morgan here, which actually puts him drafted at the same position that he was last time, but just to a different team, which is interesting. But Jordan Morgan fits the role that you're looking for of a guy who you can train up to where you need him to be, and he can be pretty moldable. And as a pass first team, Jordan Morgan gives you flexibility because it's a pass first team, but it's not necessarily like a deep threat team. There are a lot of screens, and so you need a different kind of pass blocking for that too than what you need with a deep shot offense. So Jordan Morgan gives you the scheme flexibility that maybe you don't get with some of the more prominent, just pure pass protectors, like a Guyton, who's still on the board for me here, or a Fautanu, who I think is who I gave them last time at 21. So a lot fewer tackles going in the first round in this trade scenarios mock draft. Let's go ahead and jump to the Tampa Bay Buccaneers. I'm actually going to go ahead and dip down for an interior lineman with Buccaneers. I want to give them Zach Frazier here. There is not a ton of conversation around Zach Frazier going in the first round. I want to get that started to some extent because I think he is legitimately fantastic, and I've been watching him for the past 3 years and been salivating at the thought of him playing center at the next level and doing so at a very high level. Zach Frazier is so technically sound at the position, and the Buccaneers really do need help on the interior of that line more than anything, on that offensive line at least. And if you needed him to move to guard, I do believe he would be capable of doing that, but also could be a great center for you to pair with. I mean, don't they pretty recently drafted a guard. I'm blanking on the name. Doesn't really matter. You need more help on the interior. It's more than just one player. So get Zach Frazier into the first round here and build up the interior of that offensive line. Now, the Arizona Cardinals back on the clock, we took Malik Neighbors in this scenario. Now, let's go ahead and get a right tackle in Amarius Mims, which is something that we didn't do last time because the corners were just falling. Yeah, good. McKinstry's still here. Amarius Mims is still here too. Let's go ahead and beef up those trenches, get Kyler Murray some protection, and that offense is going to look pretty nice next season, in theory, with some new outside threats and 2 new tackles that really haven't played with Kyler Murray yet. So should be pretty fun for the Cardinals. Now the Buffalo Bills. The Bills here, I'm going to go ahead and take Coyd McKinstry. I know that they kind of need wide receiver. They also really need defensive back and safety and corner, both. The Bills really need help. So I think I've said this already in this live stream. I don't know that there is a safety worthy of going in this first round. So I'm not going to force that issue. Coyd McKinstry is here. You need help on the boundary. Go ahead and get the guy who falls in your lap. The Detroit Lions up next. Yeah. What do I do with the Lions now? Because I had them going Coyd McKinstry last time. Ooh. I'm back to my thought that it would be so much fun to give them Devondre Sweat in the first round, even though I really don't believe that is in any way realistic. It just, man, it'd be cool. We're not going to do that. We're trying to be logical. Let's give them an edge rusher instead. And who do I have as an edge rusher available? I see Braylon Trice at the top here for PFF. I kind of like Braswell better. I know I had Darius Robinson in the first round last time. We are mixing things up in a big way. Let's do Chris Braswell, who I don't think I had in the first round last time. Chris Braswell is much less hyped than Will Anderson was, obviously. But if you get him in a pass rushing rotation and not as a single entity on a pass rush, I think Chris Braswell is phenomenal. That gives us the Baltimore Ravens here. I'm going to give them Lad McConkey in this scenario. So I've talked about how the Ravens don't really do this, but I know I also said that we're not going to talk about it. Zay Flowers got arrested. You need help on the outside of this offense. Lad McConkey is such a Ravens kind of receiver that it works in my head. And Lad McConkey really should be talked about as a potential first round kind of a guy. So we're doing that here, and he's going to the Ravens, which leaves Troy Franklin still on the board for the Chiefs. I don't know if I want to do that again because I just did it, but that shouldn't be a reason not to do it necessarily. If he falls to me again as the Chiefs, I kind of feel like I ought to. Let's go ahead and give them Troy Franklin again. And I am going to give the 49ers another tackle. But I gave him Graham Barton last time, and I don't want to do that again because there are too many options. Guyton, Fautanu make some sense to me, but I actually want to go with Kieran Amageji just because I do believe in the potential of Amageji. And if you're getting a guy you can develop, I think that makes a lot of sense. A huge, huge player, like literally physically huge, and just such a great athlete. So again, I'm going to drop this into the Discord. Trades scenario. And with that, I'm going to get out of here because I've been talking by myself for over an hour and a half. And I'm ready to not do that. So if you've been watching, thank you so much for tuning in. I have been Doug and of the big dudes in the trenches. We will be back in a while. There's some work things happening and everybody's getting settled. So in the new year, in the transition, we decided to take a bit of a break. We will be back. We have the UFL to talk about, and we will have some extensive draft coverage as it comes time to do that. So stay tuned, folks. We're not gone. It's just, taking a bit of a break after the college football season. So thank you for tuning in. If you have to the post Senior Bowl mock drafts here, and catch you guys pretty soon.